The world has endured wave after wave of division lately. 2024 and the years leading up to it have been tumultuous, to say the least. These conflicts have protagonists and antagonists that are different for every individual that finds themselves invested in the outcome. Us versus them, always. Yet them, more often than not, is reflective of people we love. These ideological divisions are tearing apart friends and family in a very real way. Conflict has become our comfort. I know this sounds silly, but I'd like to discuss a video game about an election. A magical fantasy election in a world of inequality. Yes, a world of inequality where the greatest injustice is the developer's lack of respect for the player's intelligence. metaphorrefantazio is a turn-based RPG from Japanese developer Atlus that mechanically is virtually identical to their flagship series, Shin Megami Tensei, more specifically, the Persona games. Before going any further, I should say that I'm not the hugest fan of Shin Megami Tensei. I enjoyed Persona 5, but every other game in the series has rubbed me the wrong way. I say that to say, so is this one. To be clear, fans of Shin Megami Tensei will find a lot to love here. But who am I kidding? I'm not talking to them. By the time you're watching this, most fans of the series have probably beaten the game and are on their second playthrough. I speak to marginal fans like myself and people who are curious, though I suspect there are some longtime fans with similar gripes to mine. Let me also say that I do not hate this game. It's very Persona 5, and as such it is fun to play and has a story worth investing time in. My issues, however, are very real and I don't think they are negotiable. The game is shorter than Persona 5. It has fewer mainline dungeons, and what it does have lacks in design quality and memorability. The side dungeons aren't randomized like some Shin Megami Tensei content is known to be. Initially this was a plus until I learned the few layouts they decided to come up with and subsequently repeated multiple times. A randomizer would have been an improvement. Also, all the side dungeons in the game look exactly the same. Just the same tile set for every side dungeon, no matter what part of the world the player finds themselves in. Even Mementos, the ever-expanding side dungeon in Persona 5, had some changes in aesthetic the further down you went. That is not the case here. The progression system in Metaphor is like a remix of Persona. In those games, each party member has a specific growth path that they take. The protagonist's growth is more flexible to account for playstyle. Metaphor extends that flexibility to all party members and allows them all to switch classes, not unlike old-school Final Fantasy games. This lets the player have a meaningful impact on the entire party. The problem is if the player doesn't know what to expect from the challenges of a Shin Megami Tensei game, they can very easily tie their own noose and hang themselves with the wrong decisions. Those old party member growth paths were laid out so that the player would have the tools necessary to complete the game by the time they reach the conclusion. Without some guidance, a player could very easily invest in redundant or irrelevant growth in their party members that waste time and resources that could prevent the player from getting further in the game. This game doesn't constantly give you opportunities to grind either, so it's easy to get stuck. metaphorrefantazio has a wide variety of difficulty levels, and an additional level of challenge opens up upon completion of the game. Only the lowest 2 levels are suitable for anyone new to Atlus RPGs. I played through most of the game on normal, the 3rd level, but I had to ratchet down the difficulty twice when I got to the final boss. This game is not forgiving. And that's actually worth getting into further. Even when the player has made great choices with their team, this game can have a "the house always wins" sort of attitude. Both the player and the enemy teams get action counters for each new turn. Typically, the player will get 1 for each member of the party, capping out at 4. Clever play rewards return counters and extended play, up to an average of 8 actions on the player's turn. To even out the house's luck, many bosses, and later in the game normal enemies as well, have an ability called Soul Scream, which, when used, gives the enemy up to 4 additional action counters. With a balanced, well-leveled party, a boss battle against a monster spamming the Soul Scream ability can be taxing. Improperly prepared, and you're looking at a war of attrition. It's okay. Some games are about player expression and creativity. I would never put Atlus RPGs in that category. They're about time flowing and trying to accomplish a goal under constraints. Metaphor definitely takes off the training wheels and seems more appropriate for players already familiar with what's on offer. All in all, I would say it's a decent game and a solid attempt at a spin-off / new franchise or whatever they want to call this. But I do have one final complaint. In this long-form piece of media about politics, war, race relations, Atlus seems to go with the least nuanced take on every issue. For example, there isn't much empathy for the villains of the story. To be clear, they're all very dastardly and evil. I suppose that's what a villain should be, but real life is so much more complicated than that. If corrupt politicians wore their sins on their sleeves, they'd never be elected. A game that clearly wishes to have a positive effect on the world is always welcome, but metaphorrefantazio is just a little too tone-deaf for 2024. It doesn't seem to respect its players enough to craft a story with a more tender hand. Bit of a shame, considering Atlus is known for the style with which they tell a story. Unfortunately, this time it was all style, no substance. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and rock the boat.